Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. I am Judy Bignall. Today I am joined by the people who usually do this stuff. Alan Turing.
I must break you.
And Sol Harris. Good evening, gents. Welcome to my now show.
So we are here to talk about the Rocky franchise. And this week, we've already decided this is going to be too big by the time we've finished recording. So we're going to break it into two episodes. So today we will be discussing the first 5 Rocky films, the sort of original franchise. And we've drafted in Judy sort of specifically because, you know, you're a woman, let's face it.
You keep bringing me in because I'm a woman.
No, that's not the reason why specifically, but you're a young woman. I mean, you were born a long time after these films came out. And you really couldn't be further from the demographic these people are aimed at, really. So,
thanks.
And you've never seen them before. So that's why we want to bring you in as a very much an outsider's point of view to see where you come in on these.
Yes.
I would like to jump in on that point and say, to be honest, I've kind of warmed to them a bit on the rewatch, but these films have always really pissed me off. And it's not the films themselves so much as the fans.
Yeah.
They're just really... These films seem to appeal to a really annoying kind of macho guy who wants to pretend like they're all fantastic, and they're clearly not all fantastic, regardless of what you think of the good one and the ones that perhaps have an argument for them being all right. Some of them are really bad. And I know a lot of people who will get really like, oh man, you've got to see it as a metaphor for what was happening in the Cold War, man. And
but it's very subtle.
And I mean, we'll get to it in more detail, but basically I've sort of been put off them by the fans.
Yeah, I know what you mean. As a general overview of my opinion here, I remember the first time I watched Rocky, and I kind of had that idea as well. And I was like, whoa, this is much sort of smaller and grittier and not what I thought. Because in my head, Rocky is like Rocky 3, Rocky 4. And I think that's what most people think of when they think of Rocky.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I've just rewatched the films, obviously. It's the first time I've watched them in a long time. And I'm not saying some of them are very good, but I never disliked any of them. Like, even the ones that are quite just... throwaway. They're a throwaway in an entertaining way.
I found something to like in all of them. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. I mean, I warmed to them. The first film, oh god, it was just like walking uphill repeatedly. It was a bit of a struggle. There were things that just little things that got under my skin that made it not an enjoyable experience. Like, the concept was fine, and the film itself was fine, but I really didn't like his character and like all these little things he did. And yeah, I'm sorry, the way he spoke made me want to punch him in the face.
Well, that was my experience of watching it the first time when I was a lot younger. I mean, I always thought it was okay, but I kind of went into this with my guns out, thinking, right, I'm gunning for you, Rocky. I'm going to pick out everything wrong with you. And I was really struck by just how much of a piece of 1970s golden era like Hollywood filmmaking it is. It's a really subtle character study drama. It's really barely a sports movie at all. I was really quite impressed with it on the rewatch, and I get it. I get why it's got that place in culture now. And,
well, I think we should talk about how it came about a little bit. It's quite a famous story in that Sylvester Stallone was pretty much an unknown actor, and well, he watched a fight. And that inspired him to write this film about a boxer.
A boxing match, or just like a...
No, a boxing match, yeah. It was Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner, I think his name is, who was like basically a not particularly highly thought of boxer going up against one of the best boxers of all time, and kind of went the distance, almost. So that was the inspiration. And like, it's famous, like, he wrote the script in 3.5 days. That seems to be touted as a good thing. I'm not sure why, but you know. And then it's the story goes that he's this unknown actor, and they want the script, and then he insists that he plays the lead role and he won't take it otherwise. Yeah. And they offer him more money just to buy the script, but he wants to have this chance. Fine. And obviously that must have happened somehow. But nowhere in this story have I heard how he got it into the hands of the right people, like how he got to the studio executives, why they then listened to him.
He was an actor. He'd been in Death Race at this point. He had done stuff, so he probably did have contacts within the studio system,
Maybe.
You know?
I mean, he was not a well-known actor by any means.
No, but he wasn't a complete outsider to Hollywood. He did have his foot in the door, which is probably enough to get a script in the hands of someone, to be honest.
But it does seem like the producers who had a kind of an independent deal that they could produce something if it was low budget. And this was very much of the time. Hollywood in the 70s was producing these low-budget indie films that were doing very well, like American Graffiti is an example.
Yeah, it was how the studio system worked pre-Star Wars. Then Star Wars ruined it for everyone, and now it's all just blockbuster tentpoles. That's
well, Jaws came before Star Wars.
No, but Jaws didn't change the landscape of Hollywood cinema in quite the same way.
But yeah, and it was this kind of new Hollywood. It was where, you know, the likes of Scorsese and Spielberg came through and Coppola and all these. So this is what was going on at the time. It was a very sort of specific period between the sort of golden age and the blockbuster age where this could have happened, where this little indie film could have firstly been made at all and then become a hit. Like, having seen the film, I'm not sure why exactly it was a big hit. I do like the film, but in terms of why would the mainstream audience take this under their wing and love it, I'm not sure.
The impression I get from how people seem to respond to it nowadays is that it's an intimate relationship drama, but you're allowed to enjoy it without feeling like your masculinity is being called into question. If you're a kind of guy where that would be a problem, you're allowed to get emotionally invested in this guy's relationship with a woman because at the end he's going to have a fight with someone, and that makes it okay.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what it is.
Also, the underdog character. You know.
Yeah, I was going to say everyone loves an underdog, and I do think there's something to be said for the sort of overarching message of the film, which, you know, is kind of, you got to take that shot, eh? If you don't go for it, then you'll never know. It'll haunt you your whole life. Eh?
I don't know. That's not that does happen in the film where there's a point where he's like, "Oh no, I can't do that," and he very quickly goes, "Oh well, yeah, $100,000, yeah, okay." But I think that the real message of the film is it's about him proving himself, like that he's worthwhile. He's worth his life. Yeah. Like, even if he's not a winner, it doesn't matter as long as you try.
I'm not a bum.
Yeah, you're not a bum.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's about, on a broader level, I think it's about going out and trying to do stuff, regardless of whether or not you're going to be a success or, you know, succeed. It's just about the importance of...
Well, I don't know. I mean, I agree with part of what you're saying, apart from that last bit. About whether or not you succeed. I don't think there's any part of him that ever wanted to do it, even if he didn't succeed. But what he wanted to succeed in was not winning, it was just going the distance.
Yeah, if he'd been knocked on his arse in 2 rounds and then... Well, I think, what I said quite flippantly there was like, they offer him money and he does it, which is kind of not what happens. And because when they offer him the fight, he's like, well, no, I'm not a contender. Well, this is ridiculous. Because he has no confidence in himself. So it's about... The reason he takes a fight is not because of the money. It's because it's a chance for him to prove to himself and others that he is worth something.
Yeah, I was struck though, because it is a very gritty and a very slow film to...
It's so slow.
Appeal to that sort of a person. So it is, like you say, it is kind of odd that it... I can see how it appealed back in the 70s, because it follows 1970s sensibilities, really, with what films were like, but it's kind of odd that its appeal has endured as much as it has. And
which I think the appeal is Rocky IV. That I understand why that film appeals to a certain demographic of people. I don't know how many of them watch Rocky all the time. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how often they go back and watch the first 2 films.
there's a lot of parallels here with Stallone's other big franchise, which we'll have to do at some point, First Blood. Whereby I think the exact same thing is true.
Yeah.
The First Blood is actually a very intelligent, well-made film, and the reputation of the franchise is that it's just gung-ho action bullshit, and I think that's the sequels have come and replaced everyone's memory of what the first film is, and I think the same's true of Rocky to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, I did like the fact that the first film is very much, I felt like it was being very true to its time and its status and Rocky's status. Just the grittiness of seeing him and the very dank surroundings and everything being kind of really shitty. If you look at it, it's not shiny, it's not Hollywood, and yet there's this guy who's trying to go about his business just like anyone else. He wants to get the girl that he has awkward conversations with, and he's got this really twatty best friend. I'll get into him later.
You know what really struck me on the rewatch is that Rocky himself is such a complete oddball. He's a really weird man. To say he's become this icon of very basic, straightforward people. He's a weird guy.
He doesn't really fit into a type, does he? He's not like a jock, and he's not. Yeah, he's.
And the stuff coming out of his mouth's so weird.
Yeah, it's shite. It's absolute garbage.
And I think most of it is. You know, I can buy the script was written in 3 days because the film feels predominantly improvised.
Well, I was going to say it feels improvised. I don't know how he sold the script and then just like twisted it all over, because that can't be actual delivery with all the kind of tag words and fillers and hedges, all these things that come from natural speech. That can't have been scripted.
But, you know, it's all the stuff of, you know, I'm going to tell you a joke, knock, knock, there's a turtle food there. It's like, what?
I was about to say that bit, like, you got coffee, you're not sleeping, have some food, we're watching over there. Like, just, he goes off on tangents.
Hey, bird. Hey, look who's here. Look who's here. The giant worm. Look at these birds. Don't these birds look like candy, you know? Like flying candy. Hey, bird, you want to fly me home? You need somebody to walk you home, you know? No. It's a cold night, you know. If I was you and you got the money, I would take a cab or something. Too many creeps around here, you know.
Do we call it character building, or do we just call it shite?
For the first third of the film, it really came across like an autistic love story.
Yeah.
It's weird, though, because I kind of thought, like, oh, well, maybe these characters are complete and utter oddballs. And there's a point about halfway through the film where they just sort of become normal and change completely.
No,
I suppose
they don't.
We'll get there.
They don't.
Well,
Nothing about that is normal.
What really struck me about the script is, I think you can really tell it's not written by a professional scriptwriter. Just because, and I'm not necessarily saying that as a bad thing, because I think it gives it a different flavour, a different sort of flow that you don't normally get. It doesn't have a lot of structure. The structure it has is not sort of the standard one. And there's a lot of things that kind of crop up that never really go anywhere. Nothing too absurd, but just like things with...
Such as...
a lot of the stuff with him working for the loan shark and he's like a bit of muscle. It's like, it's great. We established that he's muscle and that's like he's getting by.
Yeah.
But then like they establishing
that
boss
he's
character.
in a seedy world that he wants to get out of. I think that's sort of the idea.
But they established that boss character quite a lot and then they bring him back in the second one briefly. It's just like that sort of thing that it never quite pays off. Like he's arguing with the driver all the time. And I'm not quite sure what...
Oh yeah, that doesn't go anywhere.
But I kind of like it because it feels a bit more real. It feels a bit more character, like just stuff that happens and it's like, oh, that guy doesn't like him. I don't know why.
I think it's to show, like, it gives him a background in some form of fighting, some form of, you know, he's got some physical ability and also he's got a bit of spunk, you know, he's prepared to fight people and get in their face a bit more.
But I think if anything, it shows that he doesn't particularly rise to the bait. He's not an aggressive.
Well, no, not of people who doesn't deserve it.
Well, that's it. I think it's there as well to show that he has this set of skills, but he doesn't want to, you know, quote unquote, throw them away. He wants to put them to something that would be generally seen as a more constructive use of his abilities. And
I wonder how much of it as well is like Mickey's like, you know, you work for that good for nothing shark, whatever he called him. Yeah, like I think it was the idea of I don't know, the people he respects not respecting
He's
him because of
wasting
what he
his
does
life.
as well.
My point is that it doesn't feel very structured in terms of how you expect a script to be structured.
No, not at all.
And I think I like that, and I think it's why I like indie films as well. Often, it doesn't feel formulaic. It feels much more atmospheric, and it's just kind of like we're just experiencing this guy's life, and then things happen. But I like that, and I also think that the direction helps with that because it's obviously a really low budget thing. They shoot most of the scenes are shot in like 1 or 2 shots. They do a lot of long takes, and it's just sort of very experiential. Like it definitely feels like a script by someone who's trying to write a nice character rather than someone who's structuring a story. Yeah,
I agree. Completely agree.
Can we speak about the director quickly? John G. Avildsen, who won Best Director Oscar for this film. Damn. In the hype that ensued afterwards. He didn't really parlay this success into a really like successful career. Like he worked. He didn't do he came back for Rocky V. He directed Rocky V, and he also directed the first 3 Karate Kid films. But do you know what I mean? It's not quite like he didn't go on to continue winning awards and that sort of thing.
Considering he won Best Director, I don't really get why.
Well, I mean, the Oscars are
I think
it's basically that's why.
I don't know. I think it's a very well directed film. Honestly, I think it's it's one of those things where it's hard to tell how much of it's just they lucked out and limitations.
It just really felt like none of the shots kind of did anything other than just show you what was happening in that room at that time. It didn't feel particularly artistic. And I don't mean that. I don't need an over-stylized piece, for God's sake. But it felt like the story was maybe, something to be recognised, or the script and the character. But I really wouldn't have gone, ooh, good direction.
Well, I agree to a point, but, there's more to direction than cinematography. I think the choice of... there are lots of long shots, as Alan said. I think they give it a nice flow. I think the acting...
Yeah, they didn't. There's one where it's really wide and he just literally walks across the camera, but he's quite far away. That was just a shit shot.
I don't know, I quite liked all the
I didn't give it flow, it just slowed it down.
No, I don't know. I like the pacing, and I like to say I like the acting. I like the way it all comes together. I think the music, works very nicely with it. Like I say, I think the acting is really quite good in this film for the most part. And I don't know how much of that's just down to casting, but it feels like a director who knows how to direct actors and work with them and get the best out of them.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Another thing with the script, in fact, if anything, in the first film, it's where they're most successful, but in the rest of the films they struggle, is that they don't really know what to do with Paulie.
Yeah.
They're not quite sure what he is or why he's there. But in the first film, he's more justified than in the rest.
Yeah, the first film's definitely his best kind of story.
And in this first film, I think it's a good character because not only does it explain Adrian a lot, he's the antithesis to Rocky in the fact that he is an aggressive dick who has no real skill, whereas Rocky is a skilled fighter who, is very controlled about what he does.
I don't know if it's that so much as I think he's meant to be similar to Rocky, but he's never tried to better himself. He's never put the effort in to make something more of himself, whereas Rocky has made a very conscious decision to better himself. But
I think that's also, it goes on to be a really nice dynamic in the next few, obviously not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the fact that Paulie obviously flares up and gets angry with Rocky, but you can see that it comes from an own inner resentment that it's his own fault that he's not done the things that he's jealous of his friend for. I think that's quite a really nice, shade on that friendship.
Yeah. You know what character I don't like?
Don't say Mickey.
It's Mickey.
Oh,
no!
Mickey, easily my favourite character.
He's such a grumpy old man.
Oh, he's so...
The first film he's not really embraced that much, but in the second film he's fantastic.
He's just there, and he doesn't really... It just feels like he should have been merged with another character in the script, and he just looks like the kid from Malcolm in the Middle, but as an old man, which is disturbing. He's got this kind of Popeye quality to him. I just don't get him. What is he?
He's an old man who's been fighting all his life, tough as nails.
I don't know. I don't like him.
Well, he does fall into a kind of classic old boxer who's
Stereotype.
turned into a trainer kind of style.
Poimanen!
Yeah. Which is something I think we're going to have to address. I think, like, I'm certainly no boxing expert, but I suspect you two know nothing about boxing whatsoever. Would that be correct?
Actually...
Well, I actually had some questions
pro.
about boxing.
Right, okay.
Should we go through
Let's
them
go
now?
into the
You
boxing world.
You
then.
can educate me.
I mean, like I say, I'm far from an expert.
So what are the rules with boxing?
oh, God,
So...
Were you not watching?
Well, so if they both run the clock out, it comes down to a panel of judges. Is that right?
Yes. And it's done on rounds.
What are they?
In
what are they judging on?
Who wins the round, basically? Who's landed more punches? Who's done the?
So it's not about your form. It's about.
Well, it's not like dancing. It's not like, oh well, he held his legs in a really nice way there. No, it's about like if you're landing punches. And basically, they judge who won the round. Yeah, if you've landed more punches, or when you've been punched, you've defended yourself easily.
No one's won.
Well, that's why it has to go to
a tough decision then.
A judge's decision.
Next question: if someone like goes out there and just like knocks someone out in the first punch, and the fight's like 10 seconds long, do you get a refund?
No, that's part of the deal. That's just what happens. It does happen sometimes.
Are people furious when that happens, or are they happy? Because that, on one hand, that would be like a really good fight, right? But on the other hand, you're kind of shortchanged out of a
generally
fight.
Speaking, if you're at that top level where it's like the champion against the top contender, it's unlikely to happen. It does happen. Like Mike Tyson used to knock people out in the first round all the time. But yeah, especially those big fights that are pay-per-view and people pay specifically just to watch that fight and they get all their mates around, they have a big night of it. Yeah, people get disappointed, which is why, you don't put mismatched fighters together. But generally, a boxing night will be a series of fights. So they have other fights on what they call the undercard. So you have that big main fight that's everyone doing. But then, like, in a big major fight like that, even the fights on the undercard might be quite big names. They probably won't be heavyweights. They'll be like middleweights or something. But like it might be for a middleweight championship.
Okay. I mean, what I'll say about these films is that when I was watching the boxing, I started to think, oh, maybe I quite enjoy boxing. I'm getting into this. But then I remembered that I felt the same way about ballet after I watched Black Swan. And I think what it actually is that I like films.
Well, the thing is, boxing is similar to, like, say, football. Like, you watch the 3-minute highlights of a football match, it's interesting. But you watch a 90-minute match and it's extremely boring. And boxing is similar. There's a lot of dancing around and fanning about, involved in it. And some fights are really exciting and it's all go because they're both big hitters or whatever. But it depends on the style of fighters.
And I think I'd have to be invested in the people themselves on some level, because obviously that's what I'm getting out of this, is I know the characters and I know what they've gone through. But I don't think you're ever going to get that with sportsmen, because you're only going to get whatever story they've put out in the press release.
But that's exactly... I think boxing does provide a lot of that. I think it's why boxing films are very popular in the sporting films genre, because you've got an individual. It's not a team, and it's really one-on-one, and you can build a story around it. And the boxing world has a real reputation of that hype, and your classic weigh-in where they come and get weighed, and then they like talk trash at each other, and it's become a big thing. That's a real part of the pantomime of boxing.
Yeah, it's bizarre to me that the boxing subgenre is such a big deal within films. Every few years there's a boxing film up for Best Picture, and it's bizarre because they're all the same.
Well, I think it's because, like I said, it's a very individual story. It's about one person. It's all that, and you've got a classic mentor character. They always got a trainer who's like an old wizened Yoda man, and then it's a real working class escape as well. So it's always an underdog story. Like every boxing champion in the history of boxing is like, and most of them are black, in the heavyweight particularly. They're all like young guys who learned to fight on the streets and then, made it a success because of boxing. And that underdog story just has so much traction, and then you get the likes of someone like Muhammad Ali, who's just changes the whole world of boxing, and like Apollo Creed is very much a Muhammad Ali kind of knockoff, basically, in these films.
Who's the knockoff of George Foreman? Is that Mr. T?
No, not really. No.
Mr. T should have been shilling grills. That would have been fantastic.
Anyway, so when it comes to the actual boxing itself in these films,
I've been told it's very inaccurate, but I don't give a shit at all, and I think to make that complaint is to miss the point.
well, I think it's not particularly accurate based on, like I say, I'm not an expert, based on what I've seen. It is more filmic. It's just basically more visual. Like a lot of the movements they do in terms of being punched, it's like stage combat when you get hit and you have to sell it. You have to show that you've been hit.
Yeah.
Whereas in boxing, the whole point is to absorb the hits. You know, you're expecting it. You're ready for it.
I mean, in terms of someone who doesn't know boxing and was new to these films, I completely see how the technique might have been skewed to be more filmic. However, I do look at it and go, oh, wow, okay, that's really good choreography. I really like the way the fights have been edited together. They come across well. I like them. I think all the fights have come across really well.
I must admit, I found it a bit frustrating just because it is...
not accurate.
This is not accurate. It's just, it feels like I'm watching a choreographed thing rather than a fight. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel very real. Not in the sense that it's not accurate, but it just doesn't feel...
It's quick. It's so quick and smooth.
To me, as a layman, I was struck by how gritty and real it felt, and it didn't feel choreographed to me until, not to get completely ahead of ourselves, we'll go there next episode, Creed is when it started to feel very choreographed and like they were stepping around the camera for me. But in these early Rocky films, I was always kind of blown away by how realistic it came across to me, and it did look like I couldn't even tell if they had specifically choreographed what they were going to do, or if they just kind of had the two actors go at each other and let the cameras capture what happened, or what.
Part of my problem is to me it feels like, okay, I'm waiting for you to hit me, I react. Now it's my turn. I punch you, I punch you, I punch you. And it's very much like they're stood there with their hands sort of by their sides. Oh, I'm being punched, now it's my turn. Whereas boxing is much more intimate than that. It's much more intricate than that. Whereas they're always thinking like, right, oh, there's a gap, I'm in there, boom, boom, boom. And it's all about going to the body or going to the head, like reacting to what the other person's doing. And it's so much more, it's quicker, it's more fluid. But it just felt like, right, I'm standing here waiting for my turn now.
I definitely felt that with some of the fights, like the really unrealistic second Clubber Lang fight, where suddenly Rocky's a boss, and it was like Clubber was just like, okay, I'll take smack, right now, stop, I'm going to do my smack. It felt a lot of back and forth, but it also that felt unrealistic because of what the characters were suddenly able to achieve relative to what they'd previously done.
It's just so much of it is just like, put your hands up and defend yourself. What are you doing? And like, if you've been stood there just taking hits, the referee would stop the match. It's like, this person's not defending himself.
But I think that's meant to be character-based, because Apollo puts his hands up and he's always like, put your hands up. Like, he's someone who's meant to be the pro. And I think it is meant to be like Rocky training. He shows he can take a punch, and it's like, he doesn't defend himself. He is just relentless. He can be punched and come back, and he can be punched and come back.
Well, I think that's kind of the problem with boxing films, ultimately, is they always come down to a big fight at the end. And then it always is just kind of like,
there's only a few outcomes.
Is he going to pull it together? No, he's not. Yeah, he has. There you go. He's decided he's going to win now, and he's what? Like, I don't know. It just...
Well, this is another thing I like about the first film that we're actually still on. That at the end, he goes the distance, and as he's celebrating with Adrian, the winner of the fight is announced in the background. It's kind of almost lost, because that is not the important thing. The point is that he went the distance.
Yeah.
And interesting, when we were talking about earlier how Sylvester Stallone wanted to insist that he played the main role, the studio wanted to make it a vehicle for James Caan or Robert Redford or something like that. And I think if that had happened, if it had become a studio project like that, the script would have changed significantly. Not just because they would have brought a writer in to fix it up or whatever, but that main character is not a draw for a star actor, because he's a simpleton.
He's a loser.
He's a simpleton, and he's not an uneducated but still really smart guy. He is just a punchy, I get hit in the head.
Hey, I don't think so good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a beautiful part of the character. It's what makes him quite endearing in many ways. But I think you try and sell that to Robert Redford in the mid-70s, he's just going to go, well, no, I'm not playing that.
Well, you know what? Rewatching these films has really given me a new appreciation for Sylvester Stallone as well. I kind of... There's an air of him just being an action movie guy, like a Jason Statham or an Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I think he's I think he is a lot more than that. He is a. I think
He
he's a
shows
worthy.
a good range across these films.
I think he's a worthy Oscar nominee.
He actually hasn't done that much for a 40-year career.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought. And a lot of what he's done that I've seen is actually very good. I mean, certainly if you take the sequels out of the equation, then you're left with Rocky, you're left with First Blood, then, stuff like Demolition Man, which is very self-aware and
It's great, Demolition
good.
Man. We should do an episode on Demolition Man one day, just as an indulgence.
Can I say one of Stallone's strongest points as a writer, I think, watching these films, is his ability to name a character. I think the character names throughout this franchise are phenomenal. They're real, like, Graham Linehan, Arthur Matthews level character names. Don't you think? Rocky Balboa, Ivan Drago,
Thunderlips.
Thunderlips.
Seriously,
Apollo Creed's a
Apollo
well-good name.
Creed, that's a great name. Yeah,
Apollo Creed is a good name.
Butkus. Adrian! There you go, great. Yeah, they just roll off the tongue. Paulie?
What's Paulie's name?
Yeah, I don't know what their surname is.
Walnuts.
But I think even Butkus is like a good, like, within the context of that film. That's the kind of bizarre, weird name that Rocky probably would come out with for his dog,
So we've already talked a little bit about how slow this film is, and does feel like it could lose 20 minutes quite easily. When he gets the chance to fight, like when he's said, "Hey, do you want to fight Apollo?" That's like halfway through the film. It's
like I say, the sport element only kicks in right at the very end.
But you've got to set up the character in order for when Apollo kind of goes, "Oh, we'll take a chance on this guy," that you go, "Oh yes, we know that guy." That's why it's got to be halfway through.
Yeah,
You've
but
it's already know
spending
it.
a lot of time setting up the Adrian relationship and all that. And
Would we call it a relationship at this stage of the film?
shall we talk about the Adrian relationship? Is now a good time to deal with
Oh
that?
my god! I mean, yeah, this is the point I want to talk about in the first film.
Yeah.
This is like the thing I was
Yeah.
angling for. What a rapist!
No, you know what?
No, don't try and justify it. She says no a fucking million times. I don't want to come in. I don't want to come in. I don't want to be alone. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. Oh, you kiss me. Shag me.
But
I don't know.
she's a very shy character.
Yes, so don't get into her pants.
I think there's some real parallels between
Rape.
this scene, the seduction of her, and the Blade Runner that we covered recently. And in Blade Runner, it categorically is just very
That's a lot more
unpleasant.
rapey, yeah.
It is just rape.
Yeah.
But
but
here,
you're meant to root for him, and it's just seedy and grimy and.
Well, I don't know. I think everything up until she's in his flat is completely fine.
Oh yeah, it's fine. It's just they're really timid, and she
he's
doesn't
pushing
like it.
very hard.
He's very
but
persistent, but you get the sense you need to be with her. But this
Yeah.
is, I made this note before they even went on the date. I made this note as like, he is really not good at picking up signals because she's giving him nothing. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm kind of interested, but I'm coquettish and shy. She gives him nothing at all.
She acts like she hates him. Yes.
I don't know. Like I say, to me, it came across like they were just both autistic and they didn't know how to interact with each other properly.
Well, I got that in the shop, but then when they're at her house and Paulie's like, I brought my friend round here, it looks like they're going to do a gang rape. It looks so sinister. And then it's just, he's kind of like, I didn't bring you up this way. He's just such an abusive brother anyway. And then you've got his like, he's shouting down this door while Rocky's awkwardly standing there, but not really feeling awkward with Paulie. Yeah, it's so uncomfortable.
I don't know. I thought that the main scene where she comes into his room and she sort of says, right, well, I'm going to go. And he's kind of like, don't go. But I mean, that's the one that comes across a bit rapey, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he's like, he gets her in under false pretenses. He says he needs to use the bathroom. Guess what the first thing I thought was? You get into that house. Did you go for a piss? No, you didn't. You liar. You're a liar. And then he stands there and starts taking off his shirt. And it's like, she is fully dressed. She's by the door. She wants to go. She's very uncomfortable.
But
and so what, the best thing to do is to walk over and pin her in a corner and kiss her?
I think the way she plays it is never that it's always played like she's uncomfortable to kind of
It's
give
not
in
just
to her own desires. It's played like she's too awkward to go along with it. Not that she doesn't want to be there and doesn't want to do it.
I mean, look at that duffel coat. She's obviously asking for it.
I don't know. I thought the first. I think it's a very fine line, but I feel like this film just about came out on the
No, it
right
didn't.
side of it. Personally,
I can tell you now, it did not.
What's the problem? You don't like me? You don't like the turtles? What's the problem?
I don't think I belong here.
It's okay.
I don't belong here.
Well, you know, it's okay, because you're my guest, you know.
I don't know you well enough. I've never been in a man's apartment alone.
Well, they're all the same, you know.
I'm not sure I know you well enough. I don't feel comfortable.
I think my view of it is kind of in the middle, where I think because we've established the characters and stuff and you kind of get away with it, and ultimately her reaction is kind of like you feel like she's on board. But it did feel a bit creepy to me. I think the date scene where they're in the ice rink, it kind of you start to get this feeling that she's okay, you know, she's like she's happy to be on a date and talk to him. It needed to be a bit more. I think it just needed a bit more of that, and then maybe
he didn't come across like a dickhead, but that scene was just rapey.
And I think if it came across when she's in his room in his flat. And she's like, if it was very much like, do you know what, I should leave because that's the thing I should do, you know what I mean? I'm like, I shouldn't be in a man's house alone.
That would be fine.
I've never done it before. But it's just played
doesn't come
too
across
much
that
that she's a bit scared.
really, I thought it did come across like, you know, I'm being this is a bit risque for me. I'm alone in a man's house, and
I think that bit is okay.
There's
just
one
a slight
specific
tweak
moment that's
with the end. A slight tweak with the end where it's because he physically blocks the door, and at one point he takes his shirt off and he puts his arms up and like basically shows, look how strong I am.
Yep.
That's the bit there.
That's what I mean, it's
just
creepy.
too far. And I think if
I
wasn't
thought when he took his shirt off, it was more like, look at my sexy muscles.
Well,
Hey,
I think
I'm
that's probably what
seducing
he
you.
was thinking, but like he's also like it's
no. I
he's
agree that
suddenly
the point where he
really
blocks the
comfortable.
door is the point where I was kind of like, yeah, that's a bit much.
But also,
That's
she
sort of crossed
she
the
doesn't
line
want
there,
it.
but-
He leans in for the kiss. They both go down to the floor, and okay, fair enough. Maybe she loosens into the kiss, and the rest of it makes sense. It's kind of I like that it's a slow burning relationship, and she takes a long time to kind of open up to him. But also the idea that I really got the sense because of her relationship with Paulie that if she went home from the date and she hadn't got on with Rocky, that she would have got a smack. You know, like.
Well, I got the impression
I
she
really
gets
didn't feel that
smacked
she had
regardless.
any choice at
Yeah,
all.
I never
but
quite.
The point is, she has no agency in that at all. At home, in her, just nothing at all. I felt like she was pushed into everything, and I felt really, really bad for her character.
That said, it did remind me a lot of the beginning of our relationship.
Oh, shut up! Shut your face! You chased me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
You're
point.
right.
I'm not saying I'm the
What,
Adrian
when he
in this
said
situation.
that, did you think that you were Rocky and he was Adrian?
Yeah. I'm the one with the dog. So.
I could see Alan getting in a boxing, because Alan likes to go boxing every now and then. He's always going, "Oh, I'm going to do boxing at the gym."
I never
could see
have
Alan
though.
getting into.
That's the beauty of me.
I could see Alan at some point eventually getting into like an amateur fight and getting the shit beaten out of him, and then you go.
Do you know
into
Alan at all? He's so
to see what he
passive.
does, and he
Judy!
shouts, "Judy, Judy!" with his eyes like blinded
They're
from
already
the swelling.
closed. He's got tiny eyes.
My note is basically the point at which the two of them have slept with each other is kind of when the film stops being as interesting for me. It takes a sharp nosedive for me around that point, because that's when it just becomes about the boxing and the sport.
My feelings are less of the Adrian romance, and we could have told that story quicker. I would have liked to have seen a bit more about Rocky's background, like his parents, maybe something like that. Put it into a bit more of a social context of this kind of poor kid.
I don't want any of that shit.
I wanted more Mickey. I wanted more Apollo. I got both of that in the second film, so I was okay with
I
that.
want more Adrian romance, less Mickey, none of Rocky's backstory. I guess more Apollo would be acceptable. I'll give you that one.
Same. And I think the fact it pays off nicely in the second and, third one. With
Yeah.
the Apollo stuff. I think that fulfills that little hole.
I think the second one does a really remarkable job of fleshing out Apollo in a believable
Yeah,
way,
definitely,
and
definitely.
suddenly turning a villain into a very, very likable character.
Well,
Oh, I
I think
couldn't
he's
find him a
established
villain in the
really
first
well
one
in the
at
first
all.
film, actually. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
he's not a villain, but he's sort of the antagonist.
The antagonist,
Yeah.
But he's not really given his own character story or anything like that. But
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
established. He's the perfect foil to Rocky because he's such a showman, and it is very much Muhammad Ali style showmanship. It's and really well played as well. Carl Weathers, fantastically. I don't know how much of that was improvised, but does it fantastically well.
Yeah.
And I think it just and it embodies it in a way that does allow him to become a friend later on. He is not the villain. Whereas, like compared to Clubber Lang, for example.
Yeah.
It's just pure, I'm the bad guy.
Meathead, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, ratings, first one.
I mean, I think in terms of how it is as a film, how it is put together and what it does, I have 1 rating. Will I sit down and watch it multiple times and do other things that got under my skin? Those are kind of a different category for me. I think in terms of looking at it as a film and what it does and all of that, I would give it a 7.
I give Rocky an 8.
I've given it an 8.
All right.
I think it's a good film.
Have you ever seen The Great White Hype?
I haven't even heard of it.
The Great White Hype is a very underrated comedy made in about 94, 95.
Oh, it looks hilarious, so...
It's got one of the Wyans, I think it's Damon Wayans as the champion fighter, and Samuel Jackson as his promoter, as kind of a Don King kind of thing. They set up this white fighter to go up against him, and he's a nobody. It's very much it's not a parody of Rocky, but it's very much a take on those films. Anyway, so we've covered a lot of stuff there. Just talking about the first film, I think we've covered a lot of the basics, the general stuff. So hopefully we'll get a bit quicker on these other films.
I don't have as much to say about the next one.
Should we just put it down as the same as number 1 and skip it?
It is very much just retreading the same path, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean the first 10 minutes are just the last 10 minutes of the first film again.
Oh well, it's replayed. Yeah,
Franchise staple, but it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's a bit too much. I mean, if you take the impression that people are watching this in the cinema 3 years after the last time they'd seen it, before home video and all that sort of thing, you kind of go, okay. But yeah, it's too long at this day and age, isn't it? So then we very quickly get Rocky and Adrian decide to get married.
And everything else.
Well,
within the first 10 minutes.
We do start, this is where we start getting a bit more by the numbers, where it's just like, okay,
well,
Rocky does this, Rocky does that.
Rocky 2 is a famously good sequel, most people seem to think. It's generally regarded as quite good, and I'll say it's a hell of a lot better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, good point.
It's not really a film that should have ever had any sequels. It doesn't come across like
it doesn't need it.
Yeah, and I like the first half of the second one certainly, because it reverts back to that character drama kind of stuff instead of being a sports movie. It's very much about this guy who's had a taste of success and now he's coming down the other side. He's not able to keep it going, and I think that's a very interesting thing to explore. There's a lot of interesting dynamics at play, but then it just reveals its hand as nothing more than a setup to rehash the iconic popular bits from the first film, and then it just becomes a complete parody of itself with a load of training montages that outright recreate the first film, even the same song playing, and then it's just
but
the
now there's
fight
kids
again.
chasing him.
Yeah. And then it's just a fight again, but this time he wins.
I do hate the ending. That it's like, have him win, fair enough, but this whole way they've fallen down at exactly the same time. Who's going to get up? That is just...
Oh, you say that. I hated it as a gimmick, and yet I was on the edge of my seat. And when I say that, I mean I was in my bed. Like, it's because of the music that's just like the one slow slide that goes up.
Wee, 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 wee!
No.
Boom, boom, boom,
Not
boom.
that. I don't want to do an impression because I'm just going to sound really stupid. But it was ridiculous. It was a concept that was ridiculous. It was dragged out way too long, and yet I did kind of go in my stomach because of the way it was being sold. filmically. It they did it very effectively.
Yeah. I don't know. You know what this film felt like to me? It felt like someone was writing a really fantastic sequel to Rocky. It felt like he was really pouring his heart and soul into making a worthy successor to the film. And then he looked at the calendar and was like, shit, the deadline's tomorrow? I've only got 3 hours? Fuck. And then just had to, like, copy and paste the previous film, change a few words. So, like, that's what it felt like to me. Just fantastic, and then it just drops the ball. And I can kind of see why a certain kind of person loves it.
Well, I like the more Mickey and more Apollo, which I was really a big fan of.
Boo.
Especially Mickey, like going full on. Like they really got his character down by this point. You can catch grease lightning.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it the second one where he's like, catch that chicken? Because I love that. I think that was hilarious.
Now I show you a trick how to get some speed in them legs. You have to wear that stinking sweatshirt.
Well, it brings me luck, you know.
You know what it brings? It brings flies. Now listen, I want you to try, listen to me. I want you to try to chase this little chicken.
Well, what do I gotta chase a chicken for? It's embarrassing, you know.
First, because I said so. And second, because chicken chasing is how we always used to train in the old days.
Yeah.
You catch this thing, you can catch grease lightning. Ready?
Yeah, well, I'd rather eat it than chase it. It ain't very mature,
Listen,
but if you say
well,
so.
neither are you very mature. Now listen, get this thing.
A fighter ain't a farmer.
Come on, go on and get him! Get him! Come on, what's the matter with you? Get him!
Oh yeah, so also the whole Rocky, no, protect that eye. Does he then go on and give a fuck about his eye?
Yeah, they forgot about that in the next films, didn't they?
Yeah, they really did. And then it was like, brain damage, and then it was like, nope. Just all these threats kind of melt away.
It is very much a retread of the first one. There's a bit of diminishing returns there.
Oh, no, absolutely. That is the phrase I would use, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But I did enjoy it. I think it's a better crafted film. I think it's better structured. And I think that's just a bit of experience. But it's just treading the same thing, so I'm not that...
Yeah, I think it's very basic Hollywood structure, though. I don't think it's particularly... It just feels very paint by numbers. Someone
it flows a bit
about
more sensibly,
screenwriting.
that's all, I think, yeah.
I still look like Adrian didn't really like him, because they've got married and she still doesn't really care. And then they're in that house and she's asking all these really sensible questions. It was such a fantastic example of like mansplaining and the woman just cutting in and being like, what are the taxes like? And he's like, nice steps.
He doesn't even go upstairs. It's fantastic.
No. She's like, don't you need to see upstairs? Why? It looks nice. I think it's nice. We'll take it.
But that's it. I think it's difficult because it's showing that Rocky's a dickhead and that Adrian's the sensible and the smart one. But at the same time, because of the way she's been brought up or whatever, she can't face him down. So it's interesting kind of saying like, yeah, this guy's mansplaining and we recognise that he's a bit of a dick about it, but that's the world, deal with it.
Yeah.
But the big sort of plot point is Adrian gives birth prematurely, the baby's all right, but then she's ill for a while.
Oh God,
she's in a coma.
In a coma, but with no medical things monitoring her at all, no oxygen. I mean, I don't know, was that a thing?
Yeah, you just put them on a bed
slept.
and hope they wake up one day. Yeah.
Oh, that was another thing. I completely forgot that was number 2. That coma really pissed me off. I mean, I'm sure it pisses a lot of people off having a coma, or being in a coma. But she is against it. She's so against it.
What, being
and
in a
then
coma?
She wakes up and...
Oh, right, yeah,
she's so against the fight.
Yeah,
she's so
it's very convenient,
that's the point.
Isn't it?
It's overstressed, and then it's like, can you do one thing for me? And he's like, anything. When? She's not a different person. Why the hell has she changed her mind? And she's
been dreaming about the sweet victory.
You know what it's like when you have a baby, you suddenly don't care about having a man anymore. So she's not bothered if he gets hurt.
I wouldn't know,
like,
and I don't believe you would either.
Keep my kids safe.
Yeah, like earn us some money or die in the ring, and I'll get everything.
Get the insurance.
But yeah, so that was really, really pissed me off. That literally there was no way he should have ever gone and done that fight, and yet by giving him allowance, giving him the permission, which meant her character did a complete 180.
Yeah,
that was annoying.
Yeah.
That really fucked me off.
I would have liked
it's weak.
If Adrian had died, and then like Rocky 3 was a comedy about him being a single father and like having to learn to love again.
Comedy.
Yeah, he's like trying to change the nappy with boxing gloves on. Do you know what I mean? It writes itself.
Hasn't Stallone done that already? That seems right. That seems exactly like something he would have made in the 90s.
No, I don't think
You should do with Apollo though. It should because I
Yeah,
think
him
I
and
said to
Apollo
you, Alan,
moving together.
Apollo was like
Apollo divorces
he's the Black
his
Tom
wife.
Selleck. So I was like, that's brilliant. He could just literally remake Three Men and a Baby.
Sylvester Stallone's the white Ted Danson.
Is he Ted Dan? Yeah, it has to be. He's not Steve Guttenberg, is he?
Yeah, and then Paulie. It's Apollo, Rocky, and Paulie raising a young girl on their own.
God.
Do we have much else to say about the second one, or should we rate it?
I'm all right with that one. Yeah.
It's just very much a classic sequel in the mould of sequels, isn't it? Certainly old school Hollywood sequel making, where you just kind of, yeah.
I think I'd have to give it another 7, just because it did the same thing for me. I almost enjoyed it a little bit more, but not enough to have rated it any higher.
I'm similar. I think I think I found it easier to watch. I enjoyed it a little bit more, but because it's just retreading the same path, can't really give it the same credit. So I give it a 7 as well.
I gave it a 6. Pointless.
Okay, so Rocky 3. Rocky 2 was much a retread of Rocky 1, but Rocky 3, it's the 80s. I'm
going to go out on a limb and say this was my favourite one.
What? Really?
I think this may have been my favourite one out of the first 5, because I haven't seen 6 and 7.
Well, I'm going to throw down at the start here. I think this is the worst one of the entire franchise. I think it is garbage.
Garbage.
I think this might be the most mainstream friendly one.
It's just...
Maybe Rocky 4, I guess.
Just...
I mean, I'm not saying it's the best, but I mean, my favourite.
There's some really great scenes in here. The iconic ending scene is pretty great. I love Hulk Hogan popping up inexplicably at the start. That
again never goes anywhere. Just one off.
Well, this is the thing. I thought this was going to be quite an interesting film because immediately setting up like a few years later, Rocky is established champion. Blah blah blah. His whole life has changed. He's changed. He's gained a lot of confidence and all this sort of thing.
Adrian's fucking changed.
Yeah, everyone's changed. But I think that's just enough justified by the narrative.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, this is great, because this is like Stallone. He's like, in the last 5 years, he's become a Hollywood star.
Yeah.
And his whole life's been turned upside down. And he's going to be able to really write this well. And then it never really goes anywhere. And we never get to grips with anything.
This is the first one that is just a typical sports movie with no substance.
It's so weird that I should like that one more.
I agree.
Why do I like sports movies with no substance more?
So, off the bat, we've got the fantastic theme, Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, which is a phenomenal song. Easy,
but overused
easy to
again.
forget how great a song that is, because it's so overplayed and just part of pop culture, but it's great. Then what we've got, so Popeye dies in this one.
Yeah, and you've got him getting close to Apollo as well, and all of that training montage.
Yeah.
There's 2 of them in it now. It's great. And ripped off crop tops with high necks running into the sea. I mean, what's a girl not to love?
At one point, Popeye literally says, "I can't stand it," in this film. So they must have been aware of the fact that he looks like Popeye. That can't just be an accident.
It's a shame he dies, but we know now that Rocky needs someone to die to motivate him.
Yeah, to have motivation.
To do anything. Yeah. But yeah, it did just feel like a bit of a series of set pieces. That the whole Thunderlips bit with Hulk Hogan, it's just, oh look, here's a bit of fight thing. There's no point to any of it.
Well, it's not even point. That's barely even fighting. It's like a comedy bit that they do at the start of the film. It's bizarre. But I was enjoying that.
Kind of make it, the only thing that made it make sense was when it kind of showed this lifestyle now, when Sylvester Stallone's like, or when Rocky is like, this is an exhibition fight, take it easy. It kind of shows that lifestyle he's got into. Yeah. He's not having to push so much. That helped. But it was a bit like, why is this man going off on a riot? He's insane.
Yeah.
It's Hulk Hogan generally.
So, I mean, this film pretty much created Mr. T, right?
Well, no, I mean, that is what he is. Like, he was living that life before that. Like, the hair and the jewelry and all that. That was...
No, I know, but this was his breakout he was discovered and put in a film, right?
Well, he was... This
is pre-A-Team.
Yes. A-Team was a couple of years later off the back of this. But he was a bodyguard, and like quite a high-profile bodyguard to the stars. And then he was on this show that was like, you know, America's Hardest Bouncers or something like that, in which they like did these sort of like physical challenges or something. And I think he was seen on that. Sylvester Stallone saw him on that, and it was such a big, and he had that character, and it was like, oh, I can use this. And so that's basically how it came about.
I mean, Mr. T was my fauvorite thing when I was younger. I thought he was the funniest thing to exist. But
really? Were you simple?
but I have to say he is noticeably the worst actor in this franchise. It's really world breaking when he shows up, because it's such a different level of not being able to act that you just don't get in these films up until this point.
Would you care to comment on how you plan to fight Balboa? What's your strategy?
Don't need any. Balboa's so predictable and stupid. The man comes straight ahead. He's tailor-made for me, and he's gonna get hurt. No, I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool, and I will destroy any man who tries to take what I got.
Can I ask, at one point he says the line, "I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool." Is that where that comes from?
It is where that comes from, yeah. That was, okay. And he took that on as his personal catchphrase.
Well, one of his many personal catchphrases. Don't give me no back talk, sucker. Don't make me mad. First name Mr., middle name period, last name T. I had like a keychain when I was a kid that had buttons on it, and you could press them, and when you pressed the different buttons, he'd say one of his several phrases.
Oh my god.
Mother, there is no other like mother, so treat her right. Mother, I always love her, my mother, so treat her right, treat her right.
But yeah, I mean, Mr. T is interesting because he did this. Off the back of this, he got the A-Team, and that lasted a few years. And then he hasn't done anything since then except be Mr. T.
I just think there's no character to Clubber Lang. He is one-dimensional.
Just angry.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is character there, but it is just one-dimensional, yeah. And it's too cartoony to work as the main character. If it was like the Thunderlips, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a good actor might have been able to sell that, but the fact that he's not just means that it just doesn't work at all. And so the whole film's just rehashing the other films, Rocky training, blah 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 blah. And I just found the final fight really boring, and it just feels like complete and utter horseshit that Rocky wins, frankly. It feels like Clubber Lang, as he's set up in this film, should have won it. And
yeah, it
would have served as a really nice, poignant passing of the torch kind of film, as if to say, look, we all have our time, and you're getting on a bit now, and someone's going to come along and replace you, and that could have been quite nice. But no, Rocky beats him, and I don't know what the message of the film is.
Another thing I want to address here, which is a general thing, but particularly in Rocky 3, is Sylvester Stallone's size. Sylvester Stallone's a lot shorter than he's being represented in these films. That's fair enough.
But I mean, they play that up when he's going up against Hulk Hogan, though.
But they say in that Hulk Hogan is 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
And Hulk Hogan's about 6'7". So if they're extending his height by about 5 inches, then that means Sylvester Stallone's about 5'6". And there's a lot of that. And not just that, but that he's quite lean and he's not like huge. Like Apollo is much bigger, for example, just in terms of build.
He's tiny.
And now, fair enough, you get away with a lot in film, but the fact that this is the heavyweight champion and all that.
Then he loses 20 pounds.
Yeah, and in this film they go, oh, he's really slimmed down, he's 20 pounds. And they in the film itself, they announce his weight as 191 pounds. Now, the heavyweight category begins at 200 pounds. It's 200 pounds and above. So he's smaller than that. Now, I read somewhere that Sylvester Stallone in this, when he really trimmed down and he got put in his extreme weight, extreme kind of shape, he was 155 pounds.
But I was thinking, in this one, although he comes in under that minimum requirement, if you like, isn't it already because he's already got the champion, like he's already got the title, and so therefore he still has to fight because he's got the title? Or would the title just be naturally kind of taken away from him because he's not the right category?
If
how
the
does that
fighters
work?
are if the fighters are in two different weight categories, it's not a sanctioned fight. They wouldn't be fighting for the belt because it's a different.
But if
weight
he's
category.
still heavyweight champion, but he's under heavyweight size, what happens?
Well, he might have to retire the belt, and other people would fight for it. In the same way, if he just decided to retire or he was injured or whatever.
So that shouldn't have gone ahead, basically.
Well, I don't know, because if you're going to lie, then say he's, like in previous thing in the film, it says he's 202 pounds. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know if maybe the weight categories have changed or something. I don't know how it works.
Alan,
Yeah,
which one do you reckon would win out of us in a fight?
and me and you,
Yeah,
have we got rules or is it street fight?
boxing.
Me.
I don't know. Alan, you would avoid punching for as long as you could. Sol, you'd be dancing around, and then Alan would deliver a knockout.
I think Alan. No, I think Alan wouldn't take me seriously, and I would go out to a cabin in the woods and I'd drink eggs and chop wood and.
Shall we do it? We'll do it for the show.
Yeah, we'll do a bonus video on the website.
And Calvin can be Mickey.
Or Adrian.
You're a wrecking machine.
Calvin!
Oh, you should. That's adorable.
He's going to hurt you permanent. I think I might have a slight advantage in that I do occasionally do physical things.
I go swimming like twice a week.
That's fair enough. So if we can get back to Rocky 3.
Should we rate it?
Sure. I gave it a 5.
I also gave it a 5.
I'm going to stick with a 7.
Fucking hell.
Solid. Have you given 7 to them all now?
Yep. They do. I mean, if we're going to go micro changes, the thing is, I can appreciate it wasn't as good artistically as a piece of as a film, but I enjoyed watching it, so my viewing was still 7.
Are you trying to usurp Sol, Senor 7? Senorita 7.
Siete. I think I've done it. I just won.
Yeah. So they came back for a fourth one, which was a real landmark in cinema history, the first ever feature-length montage.
See, hang on, you say that. I was warned that 4 would be pure montage. It was not.
I must admit, when I watched it again, it wasn't as bad as I thought, because I did think it was just a montage.
All right. The last third of the film is just montage.
Yes, very montage heavy. You know what? 4 was a weird one, and I think it's because of the villain, and I think it's because of what's her name? What was Bridget Nielsen or something? Scary woman who looks like her husband. Because of all of these things, it felt like a James Bond film.
Yeah, it does.
Rocky.
Don't forget the robot.
Yes, but it really felt like we are baddies. We are, there's a secret thing going on. You've got to, blow the lid off of this secret thing, and it really felt like a James Bond, like one of the early ones.
Well, obviously, it was made at the height of the Cold War. It very much is about the Cold War. So that's something new for the franchise. The fact that the franchise is now become a political allegory for something that's not what they used to do in these films, is it? I'm just gonna straight up say it. I fucking love Rocky IV. There's 2 films where I've got this sort of relationship with them, where they are appallingly bad films, but I love them. The other one is Venom, which we were speaking about recently.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's Venom and Rocky IV.
I heard really shit things about Venom.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's shit. It's awful, but it's so hilariously, it's just so much fun. And Rocky IV is the same thing. It's awful, but I fucking love it. I cannot help myself. It's just everything.
It is bad. It is bad.
Oh yeah, it's really bad. Although, you know what? I do think it's legitimately better than the third one, personally.
You're saying that just to spite me.
No, I think it's doing something vaguely new. It's kind of got more.
Well, because it goes
purpose.
to Russia.
Well, no, it's about more than just Rocky's going to fight a guy again. At least it's trying to make some sort of...
Exactly what it is, though.
I was going to say, it's already copying.
No, there's an attempt at subtext here, and it's ham-fisted and not particularly subtle, but it's trying to do something more.
All of his motivation... His motivation comes from the fact that his friend's dead.
Oh, you know
Guess
what
the
though?
Motivation was in the other one.
Yeah, but even that
dead.
is done so much better than in the third one. Because it is a bit of a... it's quite a gut punch of a moment, really, isn't it? It could be done better, but you're not expecting it. You're not expecting...
I completely called it.
Creed dying in the ring.
Yes! Completely called it.
Anyway, I hate the way this opens with the end of the last one again. Just want to keep hitting that home.
But also freezes in the same point as well, where they're having a nice little slightly sexual spar.
Because if they'd kept it going, they would have seen them not hit each other. It's acting and not fighting.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, so what happens in this film? Paulie gets a robot.
Oh, man. Now, what was that all about? What is going on? It's just... Not only... It's not like a Robo-Sapien. It's like a fully AI sci-fi robot that can communicate in English. They'll say stuff like, "Hey, I better go phone so and so," and then the robot will be like, "No worries, I've sent him a fax." It's like it knows what's going on. It's what were they thinking?
I don't know. It looked like a live animation flubber. Was it meant to just be like, we have money, look at this?
Well, kind of, except that would suggest that the film's meant to be critiquing Rocky for having lost touch, and I don't think the film ever tries to make you think that. It's just a weird...
It also suggests that they've put any thought into what's happening at all. But what I really love about it is when they give this as a present to Paulie, and Paulie's reaction is exactly what the audience's reaction is. It's just like,
what the fuck?
Why is this happening? What's going on?
You know what I really love? I was listening to the soundtrack score, like the score soundtrack, not the songs, the other day, and like the music that plays when that robot comes out is the most absurdly, like, offensively 80s thing I've ever heard. But they've even the Happy Birthday Paulie is like embedded into the soundtrack. They hadn't taken that out. That's in there with all the music, all the 80s noises. Oh, it is just... And then, of course, Paulie takes it for his wife.
But it's a three-beat comedy. At first, it's like, what the hell is this? Secondly, it's like, oh, he's trained it to bring him beer and things like that. And he's got a woman's voice. And then, it's nagging him, and he's like, oh, I'm leaving the country. Classic.
Oh, I love this film! It's so good! I just wanted the robot to come in with like a rolling pin and like bonk him on the head. And it never comes back in any of the later films. That's the other thing. You'd expect the advancements in AI. Presumably Paulie got divorced or whatever. It's just baffling. Anyway, then we get one of the first montages to No Easy Way Out. Can we talk about the soundtrack to this film?
Doesn't fit. None of the music to the montages
Oh, I
fits.
don't know. I think this film's soundtrack is one of the greatest film soundtracks of all time in terms of original music written for a film. A collection of original songs. It's phenomenal. No Easy Way Out, amazing. Burning Heart, fantastic. Hearts on Fire. Hearts on Fire!
Oh yeah, okay, that, yeah, good song. Good motivational song. But none of the others just didn't fit the montages that were being shown.
Yeah,
you know?
but then the training montage music. I mean, that's incredible music. You know? Living in America. That
Well, at the moment, that sounds a little bit.
Living in America.
that's brilliant.
No, that one was one of my least favourite. Yeah, I thought it was a really nice, stark, glaring contrast. How Rocky's in a shed with like ox harnesses
Well, that's not very
and rustic. You know, the American tourist has come over and he's living in a shack and he's training naturally.
He's
and this other guy is
turning
like Bionic Man.
You know what this film really needed is a scene where some American guy, like an American army man or something's like, "Look, Rocky, this is the experimental boxing steroid we developed for you," and he goes, "No, I'm gonna do this by the book. I'm gonna do this properly," you know, and like turns
the American
it down.
way.
Yeah, they needed to kind of. They're trying to play it like a moral victory because Rocky's done it properly and the other guy's cheating with steroids. Yeah. But Rocky's never given the opportunity to do anything but do it the proper way. So
plus, he doesn't need a moral victory because he gets a victory.
So, what I found really annoying about this was that there is no way he can beat this man. The point is he can't. You know, if it's an average of 700, whatever it is, per punch, and this guy's doing over 2,000, you know, but now he's trained. There is no physical way he's going to beat him, but we know that at the end of the film he's got to. So I was like, there's got to be a drugs bust. He's going to have to reveal, there's a fight, but also he's going to reveal that this guy's illegally using drugs, and then it will be the moral victory. And in the end, that drugs thing comes to nothing, and he still beats the guy, and it was the most unrealistic thing. I thought beating Clubber Lang was unrealistic. This was ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree. Though I do love the line, I see three of them out there. Hit the one in the middle.
Oh yeah, hit the middle. Yeah, that's
fantastic. And anyway, yeah, he wins the fight very unbelievably so, and then the Russian crowd inexplicably turn to be on his side. Start chanting "Rocky, Rocky." No justification for that. Very unbelievable. Wouldn't happen.
Also, oh my god, you know his final speech.
Oh my
Wasn't
god!
that the worst final speech ever given?
A slow clap.
That was brilliant.
The crusty old general turns round to see his sidekicks already stood applauding and thinks, "Oh, I guess I better applaud as well." Fuck off, as if. Well, Rocky IV, I give a 6. I give a 6 out of 10.
I gave it a 5.
I think I'm going to give it a 5 as well, actually.
But then Rocky V, the last one, this was made as the finale. Start during the end of the last one. Utter bullshit, no need for it. Then Don King pops up.
Yeah, by this point in real life, because this was 5 years later, Don King had established himself as a well-known promoter and bullshitter. Don King, by the way, a real nasty piece of work.
Oh, yeah.
So
very unpleasant, man.
This guy is kind of based on that idea.
Well, isn't it bizarre that they've got just an overt parody character in this film? Because I don't think I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anyone in this series up until this point who is just a spoof of a real person in the same way as...
Like I say, Apollo is very much just Muhammad Ali, but he is a rounded character. It feels like using that character type rather than straight up, I'm playing Muhammad Ali.
And he's not dressed like him doing an impression of him, is he? He's not quite the same. He's like a clear stand-in for him. But the Don King guy here, it's like they might as well have hired, I don't know, John Coleshaw, but not...
Well, they could have hired Don King. He probably would have done it. So this film is set up by basically, it looks like they're going to try and get Rocky to fight again. And he wants to, but he can't because his brain's...
Well, he finally doesn't fall for the goading, you know? It was quite refreshing.
Oh, he does.
Actually.
He does.
He does fall for it completely. They just won't let him fight.
Yeah, he just doesn't get paid for it.
Yeah, oh, no, that's what I mean. He doesn't go for it. So, you know, he has the street fight at the end, but he doesn't get lured back into the ring.
But
he wants to, but he doesn't go in.
He would have, but they wouldn't let him because he's got brain damage and they wouldn't license him.
Yeah.
It's one of many Rocky films where he's being lured back. It's what they do in every sequel. He's being lured back into the ring, but...
Just this one more,
But it's the first Rocky film where he becomes the protege, sensei, Mickey character to another boxer, which they do again later on. So, I mean, that's not a bad idea. Certainly with this being intended as the finale to the series. I don't think the character, the guy that he trains...
Tommy Gunn.
I don't really like that character. I don't think he's particularly properly developed. I don't really get a sense of like what he is or who he is. I think a better actor could have made that a lot more than it was.
I think it's because they tried to do too much in that film. Like, it, you know, they didn't really have time to expand on that because there was a deliberate kind of rub up against the child character, the son.
The kid who ages
they had
5 years
both
overnight.
storylines.
Yes.
Oh my god, yes, exactly what I said. I was like, he was 9 and now he's like 13.
Now, when that happened, I thought, oh, they must be doing that to justify the fact that this kid is aged 5 years between the two films. But no, it's a different actor.
No,
it's Stallone's kid in this
yeah.
one.
It was Stallone's son in this one.
Yeah, so bizarre choice. I guess it's just so they could have him dealing with stuff at high school. But you know what? I actually really like the subplot with his kid. I like that we got...
Yeah, it's the main emotional thrust of it, isn't it? Yeah.
And I like that we got a Rocky movie that was like a high school drama that was about a kid training up to smack the bully in the face. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing we'd
cute.
pitch as a joke, and it's just legitimately in this film.
I did like all that. What I really didn't like about it was the way that Rocky... You know, we get the whole point where Rocky is ignoring his own kid in favour of this fighter. And he never learned... Like, he does learn his lesson, but only because the other fighter walks away and he has to deal with his son. And, like, I feel like it should have been more justified somehow, where he learned that this was more important. And maybe he gave up on Tommy and said, Tommy, I can't train you. And that's why Tommy left. And so that would be less of a... Because it's a bit too black and white, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm your guy, you're training me up. Oh fuck you, then I've got a car. It's a bit too black and white, where it could have been a bit more subtle, I think.
Yeah.
Mickey comes back as a ghost
for a really out of character sentimental bit that he never would have done.
Yeah.
And then you suddenly see Rocky wearing a necklace.
Mickey loves you. It the way it plays is as though Rocky's just got a false memory that he's managed to convince himself happened that never happened. It doesn't, and I don't think that's the idea, but that's how it comes across.
Can I tell you a bit about Tommy Gunn, or the guy who plays him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting story. It's a guy called Tommy Morrison. Now, he's not an actor. This is basically the only thing he ever did. He was a boxer. And when this film was made, he was about 20 years old, and he was an up-and-coming great boxer. And he took a few months off to do this film. Like Sylvester Stallone saw him fighting and auditioned him, blah, blah, blah.
Fucking hell. Fucking pack it in, Stallone. Stop just going, hey, that's cool. That should be in the film. It doesn't work. Mr. T, robots, this guy. How about you just cast like a normal person?
I would not have guessed that this guy was not an actor, though.
I would have.
Oh, yeah,
I think he comes across like a wrestler who's landed a part in a film.
Oh, he's a big lad, but no.
Yeah, I would have thought maybe he's been cast above his range in the sense of they needed someone to look the part. But I wouldn't have guessed that he was a complete non-actor.
I would have guessed it because he doesn't look like a typical Hollywood actor. He's not got the sort of good looks, basically. That's
Well, that's it. His face is smashed up a bit.
He's not a bad actor. He's
a jock, though. He's got jock good looks.
He's not got a bad face, guys. It's the hair that's questionable.
Yeah, it's the hair.
The mullet.
I guess that was fashionable back in 1990. Right, yeah.
Well, after this film, he went back to fighting. He didn't take up acting. He continued up his career, and he did eventually win a heavyweight world championship. He didn't last very long because he got beaten. And he never quite hit the heights that was expected of him. But he fell into like a lot of drinking and just carousing and kind of that lifestyle. And then in 1996, he was, had a medical for a fight, and it was revealed that he was HIV positive. So he wasn't allowed to fight anymore because
blood,
be it a combat sport,
spraying blood all over the audience,
Yeah, you can't really get AIDS from that amount of blood, but,
No.
This was 20 years ago, I suppose. Anyway, and then eventually, like 10 years later, he started talking about how he never had HIV, and it was a false test, and he was trying to get to fight again, but then he wouldn't actually let anyone test him. And then nothing came of that, really. He started drinking again and stopped taking his medication.
Oh, God, this is meandering as Rocky V.
A few years later, he died. of AIDS. Would you believe it? So yeah, he died when he was 44. And if you see a picture of him like when he was in his 40s, it's just like, it's just looks like someone who's dying of AIDS, basically. But it is just like quite tragic when you just watched him in Rocky V as this strapping young man. So yeah, quite an interesting story. His life, if it's worth looking into.
What's his name? Tommy Morrison.
Tommy Morrison, yeah.
So I mean, this is just a really meandering, nothingy film, isn't it? It's just kind of, there's some nice stuff in it, but it is just kind of all over the place. Nothing, the stakes never feel high enough to care.
It seems more like Hollywood fodder this time. A bit more like plot points that are recognised and with motives that are recognised, but it all feels a bit too squeaky clean.
That said, I really love that this one doesn't culminate in a boxing match. It culminates in a street brawl. I think that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it almost comes across like it almost comes across like a parody of a Rocky film. Especially with the subplot being about a kid punching a bully in the same way. But I kind of like that. I think it's an interesting change. The whole message of this film is
that violence solves all.
Well, I've made that same note. I don't know what the message is. Is it that sometimes you've just got to beat the shit out of things to
and I'm okay with that, really, to be honest. I think that's fair enough. Sometimes you just got the bully's picking on you, smack his face in, and he won't do it again.
Yeah.
In fact, you become friends.
Well, that was a step too far for me. I was fine with the bully sort of, him being like, "We cool," and the bully being, I was all right with that. But then cut to them hanging out in his house.
Yeah, I said the same thing.
And his earring, he had a nice little earring on.
Oh, that was so distracting. Every time he talked, it wiggled, and I was just looking at the earring.
You know what? Stallone's kid, whatever he's called, Sly Jr., Sage.
Yeah, he's all right, isn't he?
He's all right. Yeah, I think he does pretty well in this film. I think he's got I think he's got that screen charisma. He's got a likable charm that goes a long way, and he does all right.
Did you know that the original ending for Rocky V was Rocky would die in the street fight at the end? Die in Adrian's arms.
How would that work?
It kind of makes sense with the whole conclusiveness.
They were filming the film with that in mind, and it was quite late on a change. It wasn't like an early draft or anything like that. That was the plan.
But it makes sense. They hold the taboo of brain damage over his head so much, no pun intended, that to have that final blow from the person he's trained at the end, it would make sense that would do some damage.
Yeah. And that would be a nice parallel to the subplot with his kid as well.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of montages throughout this film of like, oh, remember back at the beginning, and hey, look, these are the glasses I found. And then at the end, with the credits, it goes back to showing them all as young'uns. And so it really felt like the end of a franchise.
But I don't quite get what what would the point, what would they be trying to say with that?
Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, the good ending here, the right ending would have been him not rising to the bait.
Yeah.
And then they want a street fight, and he's like, "Do you know what, Tommy? I'm not going to fight you. You've shamed yourself. You've disgraced yourself. I'm a bigger man. I'm going to walk away and be with my family."
But that's what they've tried to do. They've done that, but they think that having him fight in a street fight instead of in the ring does that, and also appeases the fans.
No, I know it doesn't work at all.
But in terms of for the fans. I think that's
that's why it feels like a very
like.
muddled message of a film. I don't really know what it's trying to say. Well, I know I said I thought the third one was the worst one, but I have made the note here: worst Rocky ever. So apparently, I like this one less.
I don't know. I think for me, it's like on a par with 4 in terms of.
I think this is about on par with the third for me. So yeah, similar.
Yeah.
But it could be worse.
Well, it was also a financial failure as well, and critical failure. Whereas Rocky IV was generally liked, even though it's quite simple. Yeah. And Rocky IV was the most financially successful sports film until Moneyball, which was like 2008.
What?
No, it was 2013. It was like 25 years.
Is that because there were like 30 years of inflation to give and.
No, that is not accounting for inflation. Moneyball made a little bit more than
How the
Rocky
fuck
IV,
did Moneyball make
inflation.
Money? I guess it had Brad Pitt in it. I thought Moneyball was quite a small little film that just kind of, got good critical reception.
But that's it. It only made a little over 300 million. It's not like where we think of nowadays as huge success.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Rocky, the original Rocky is one of the most successful independent films. Oh, should we do ratings for Rocky 5?
Rocky V. Yeah, 5 from me.
I think 5.
Yeah, I gave it a 5 as well.
5
I gave
for
5
5.
for the last 3, yeah.
Alan, so me and you again having a fight, but it's a street brawl.
Okay, yeah.
Who do you reckon wins then?
So sorry, is this meant to be different concept?
Yeah,
from
we're
before?
not in the ring. It's not with like boxing gloves. We're in the street,
I still think it'd be
bare
me.
fists.
I think Alan would be sneakier. He'd use dustbin lids.
Well, this is it. I think I'd pick up like a drain pipe, or not a drain pipe, like a big pole, something made out of metal, and whack him with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Alan can run pretty fast.
Can he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only for short distances, but that's it. Like I can run fast for 7 seconds. Like that's about as much as I can, and then
That's
I'm
all you
back.
need to do to get away from a drain pipe. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you're saying you would run away and I would win by default? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
He's so passive, Sol.
I don't know. I think in the right circumstances, I think you underestimate my ability to just be quite vicious. I think I'd just smash your face in against the pavement.
Yeah, but I think I could take it. I think I could take a punch. I think you would be really shocked with how little you smacking me against the pavement would affect me. At which point I would then like reach up and grab your nuts with my hand and like squeeze them and look you in the eyes like, yeah, this is
Are
happening.
you meant to be fighting him or giving him some
Yeah, and then
form of
we'd
pleasure?
then we'd tenderly embrace and kiss. That moment where the two people are squabbling and they get really in each other's
Coupling
face,
in
and then there's a beat, and then they start kissing, and it cuts to them like like in bed, sweaty.
Just rolled off each other. Hey.
Diminishing returns / fiction.
Thank you for listening, and if you have any connections with a boxing gym, then we want to hear from you because Sol and I really need to deal with some issues. Now, we don't want to actually do any training, we just want to put some gloves on and smack each other about a bit. Now, of course, please don't forget to come back next week when we deal with the latter part of the Rocky franchise in anticipation of the release of Creed 2. And if you do enjoy the show, then please do us a favour and go and rate us on iTunes. This is the best thing to raise our profile and to encourage new listeners. Thank you very much, and we hope we'll see you next week.
Happy birthday, Paulie.